Mind you, the Mexican police pulled over
in Mexico
a van with 10 teenage boys tied up in the back. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another exciting episode of Youth Group Chronicles. Joining me back on the show, I have Pastor Chad Spencer. Welcome back, man.
Dude, it is so much fun doing these things. I mean, seriously, like, you just get to hang out and talk about ridiculous stories. And so I've had a blast doing it. I hope you guys are enjoying these stories and this podcast as well.
Yes.
Like I joked on the other one. It's like, the world needs this. Like, we need to be able to laugh because we probably cried about youth ministry or ministry mistakes before. Yes. And we need to laugh about them now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think this is something that can help many people. I get so many DMs, comments, emails of, oh my gosh, I can't believe this podcast. Like, this is absolutely wild, these stories. So we'll jump into some of the crazy stories here. And these are email submissions. So first off, if you would like to email us a crazy youth group story that you have, we want to hear it. You might just get featured on this show. So this first story is from Brett B. He said, our youth group does something every year at camp called boat races. We spend all week split up into different teams building cardboard boats that students race at the end of the week. We bring primers to help with those boats to help them keep them sealed and floating. And the students use their hands to spread paint all over these massive sheets of cardboard. However, one year, our director accidentally bought an oil-based primer, and the students couldn't get it off their hands. No matter how much they washed their hands, they couldn't get this primer off, and they had been, spreading it. We covered the entire campground in primer. Plates, silverwares, trees, sinks, bed frames, all covered in paint. They had a board meeting at the campground the next week, and we are no longer invited back.
We've had a discussion, and the conclusion is that your church is never allowed back here again because you destroyed absolutely everything.
Annihilated. Yeah.
That's terrible.
You cost us more money than we make on you. I'm sorry.
Made one of those stupid boats, the cardboard, like
I
duct
haven't,
tape
but
ones?
I know there. So I grew up at a youth camp, and there was this one group every single summer. It was a Methodist camp. Wednesday night, they'd have their boat race, and they were like all hyped up at it, and all the kids would just sink in the middle of the pond. I don't think I ever saw a boat make it across.
We did one in our youth group and our church, and it was the most miserable, like, painstaking thing ever. And we didn't use a primer to seal stuff, so we like immediately sunk. It was a terrible experience.
So what they did is they would actually tie ropes to the boat on one side of the pond, and then they'd get the rope to the other side of the pond, and then the team would drag this boat. So you didn't have to paddle. You just like whip them across the pond and hope that it just didn't get annihilated in the water, disintegrate to nothing.
That's so amazing. Actually, at your parents' youth camp, one time I came and I preached. and again, I'm not a youth pastor. I've never done youth ministry. This
was out of your comfort zone, I guess.
But youth, it really isn't my thing. But I was preaching this sermon, and I was like in a serious moment in the sermon, like preparing to make the altar call, getting things ready. And this camp's in the middle of nowhere, and we're in the outdoor venue, and so you could see everywhere around it. And a black bear comes out of the woods, like maybe like 100 yards away, and like I see one kid notice it, and then I see him hit his friend, and a second kid notice it, and then I'm like, okay, the bear will just kind of go away. And then like 3 minutes later, the bear's still hanging out on the side. And so at the end of 3 minutes, like 20 kids are looking there. And then like 5 minutes later, the bear is still hanging out there. The entire youth camp. And when you're preaching, there's some things that like you can come back from. And then there's other things you just stop and acknowledge. So I stopped the sermon, right? Like getting ready for an altar call. I say, everybody look, there is a bear. And the bear, like, it would not go back in the woods for anything.
Everyone already knew there was a bear at this point. You just had to address the bear in the room.
Exactly. And so like 15 minutes later, it goes back in, and I could finally like resume with the message. You
just have to acknowledge at that point.
It's like, all right, thanks, bear. You already screwed the whole thing up. You want to just come down and like
join us?
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny, dude. I remember that. That brings back a lot of memories. That's funny, man. Emily J said, one night, my youth pastor decided to tell us the story of his worst youth pastor fail. Back at his previous church, he had decided to do an event where the students would bring things to burn as a symbol of surrendering whatever that thing was to God.
Love it.
Cool in theory, yes. However, he did not take into account some of his students were punks and they weren't going to take it seriously.
Right.
The night started out great. Kids were having, being vulnerable. They were giving up different things. And then a few of the teenage boys thought it would be hilarious if they went and got their cans of Axe body spray out of the car and made a joke about giving those up.
Yes.
Before my youth pastor could intervene, they had thrown the highly flammable cans into the barrel. Naturally, the cans exploded.
That's amazing.
These are metal cans.
Yep.
Basically, they just created a bomb. And the fire was big enough to catch the overhanging tree in the church parking lot on fire. They ended up being able to put the fire out, thankfully, but the senior pastor of the church was not happy, and that was the end of any kind of fire-related events at our church.
Dude, I feel like that's like the thing to do, right? Let's have our burn barrel. How many great things happen at the burn barrel, but how many terrible things happen at the exact same time? I was that kid, 100%. I was that kid. You probably did it, right? When you take the lighter and spray the Axe can and make the blowtorch.
I never did that. I was way too sheltered for that, dude.
Oh my goodness. Come on,
that sounds
Sam.
so fun, though.
It was awesome. And then if you held it too long, then the flame would go back in and you'd throw it and then it would, in theory, explode.
Never did it.
Man.
Never did it. I never even threw a can into the fire. I heard that if they exploded, they could slice your throat and you'd be dead. And that was all it took for me.
You were like that homeschooled kid that's ate a seed and swallowed it. And you have your parents told you that you have a watermelon growing in your stomach or something.
So let me get through another email submission here. This story was also from Emily J. She said, one night we had the whole youth group at our house for a pool party. They decided to play the classic game of covering a watermelon in Vaseline and wrestling other students to bring it back to your team's assigned corner of the pool. Disclaimer, this was terrible because we had to clean out the pool afterwards. Not only did it make a huge mess, but while they were playing, one of the girls got trapped underwater and then kneed in the face by another student. I remember watching the blood start to surround her in the pool, and her nose was definitely broken.
An episode of Jaws.
And pretty gnarly to look at. Thankfully, her parents were youth leaders too, so they were understanding, but our games were much more tame for a while after that.
Right. Dude, that's so true, because I feel like in every youth pastor's career, there's okay, that was way too far.
Way too far.
I'm looking at Julie. Maybe. And she said, these stories give me great joy. I emailed a few stories in today.
Oh, I haven't seen them yet.
I
got some fresh content. Okay, well, we're going to get you on the podcast. If you make the cut, if they're good enough, then we'll definitely feature you on the show. So would love to hear those. So I'll definitely check them out after this. No, Emily also, we'll just go one more on the email submissions. Yeah. She sent another one. So this is her third. Emily J., you have a lot of stories, it sounds like.
How long were you in youth ministry, Emily?
She said, one time, a youth group asked the staff members of the Mexico-based orphanage I work at to help them pull off an initiation prank on their freshman guys.
Oh, this is good.
All of the parents were in on it. They had two of our staff drive to the campground, blindfold, duct tape, and tie up the boys, and then throw them in the back of our 15-passenger white van. They were supposed to drive around the kidnapped boys on the bumpy dirt roads surrounding the orphanage for a while to get them nice and jostled and then bring them back. While they were driving around, however, the police pulled them over.
Oh, no.
Mind you, the Mexican police pulled over
in Mexico
a van with 10 teenage boys tied up in the back. Our staff began to panic as they knew there was no way they'd be able to talk their way out of that one. The staff members in the passenger seat jumped to the back and started ripping off blindfolds, at least, hoping that would do the trick, right? And that they were praying at this point that they didn't search the vehicle. She said, thank the Lord, the officer only asked the driver a couple of questions and didn't happen to look behind the seat to see 10 kids tied up on the floor for this apparent kidnapping. The prank definitely accomplished the goal of scaring the boys, but now we have a strict no prank rule with all of our guests.
Oh my goodness. Dude, that could have been so bad. That brings me back to your original FBI story.
Yes.
And that could have been terrible. Could you imagine Everybody's
Mexico.
In like a Mexican prison. Like,
no explanation. Imagine if there's a language barrier.
yeah. How do you
Game
explain
over.
that? Why are there children tied up?
This is not what it looks like.
Sir, we're a church. Okay, so how is a church like smuggling kids somewhere?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's like a mashup of a couple stories we've had on the show. So there's this one where they did a kidnapping similar to that, and the kid broke out of the car. And this is on episode 1 or 2 if you want to go listen. They broke out of the trunk of the car and started running down the street. And people started calling the cops. Like, oh my gosh, there's a kid just broke out of the car, like he's getting kidnapped. And when they pulled back into the church, they like got the guy out of the car at gunpoint because they thought he was kidnapping. And like you said, the FBI one where, you know, kids were putting up bad signs saying, hey, we're being kidnapped on a youth trip in the van. And then the FBI, yeah, not good at all.
Dude, youth ministry is not for the faint of heart.
No, as you can probably see
like,
from listening
why
to the show.
do most of these, like so many of these stories, like they either include like the hospital or the police or tickets or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who would have thought so much criminal activity would happen in youth group?
It just does.
Surprise!
Who knows? There's no answers, apparently. All right. We're going to move on to some youth ministry fails. This is one of my favorite segments. We've been doing this for a while, but there's some good stuff.
Hey, let's with it.
Corey S., he said, my biggest fail in youth ministry was having the church burn down my very first night on staff as pastor.
What?
$1.3 million in damage. Could you imagine? First night, youth pastor, just burned down.
It's like,
I asked
this was my
him,
first and last day.
I was like, I kind of need some context on this story. He's like, it's kind of a long story, but the FBI and the ATF were involved. It was an unbelievable mess. I still work there for another 18 months, and I have continued in ministry for at least 20 plus years. Needless to say, I do not share this story when I am a candidate at churches.
Oh my goodness. Could you imagine?
No, I cannot. I'd be done.
I have so many questions. How? Right? Like, how did you burn it down? Don't you, like,
How did it completely burn down? That's
like, talk about making first impressions. Like, man, you know what? You got everybody's attention in that moment. The government's attention, your pastor's attention,
insurance attention. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Man. And $1.3 million. So that was no like small little country church. This was a big deal here. So Corey, who's been in ministry for 20 plus years, he sent in a couple more. He said, one time I accidentally left a dozen softball-sized buffalo testicles to thaw out in the church microwave for 4 days.
All right, hold on. Why? Why are we doing this?
Okay, so he said micro, but I think that could be micro fridge or microwave. So we'll just say microwave for 4 days. I guess he forgot them there. Only to be found minutes before a whole church potluck. I can already picture the faithful little grandma going in all happy because this is her potluck ministry, going in, opening the microwave or whatever it was that they were thawing in, and finding freaking bull testicles or buffalo testicles.
This is like the auntie that still believes like when girls wear pants, they're like going to hell and like movies aren't allowed.
Literally.
And she opens up the microwave and she sees bull testicles.
He says they were the size of a softball.
Man, you changed her life. She will never be the same again.
So many questions, dude.
That's amazing.
I'm not even going to ask them. I have so many, but you know what?
We should ask them.
Why were you using those? What were they for?
Yeah, what were they for? Like, if they were not for Fear Factor for Youth Group, okay, that is the only plausible explanation. But if they are not for Youth Group, Fear Factor, why on God's green earth do you have 4 bull testicles thawing out in the church?
Yes. Good question. Maybe he'll let us know.
Yeah, please.
We'll find out.
Please. Follow-up email. Requested.
Corey S. also had one other story he sent in. He said, I had a kid who shattered all the bones in his legs falling from a 30-foot tree platform at a youth group event.
Oh, no.
Dude, 30 feet is no joke.
That would hurt so bad.
So the rock wall at the camp we grew up at was 40 feet. So I don't know if you ever climbed that, but you know, take a quarter of that away. That's scary.
That's going to hurt.
Oh, yeah. Shattered all the bones in his legs. Man, that's horrible, man.
that poor kid. Like, hey, what was your takeaway from youth camp? Well, I was taken away in an ambulance.
I was taken away all right.
I was taken away in a totally different dynamic.
Chris M. said, my biggest youth ministry fail was probably when I slung a kid off my car after I told him to get off and quit jumping on my car. Come to find out, he broke his wrist. That was fun.
I actually, in church, I did this to somebody. I jumped on their hood and I was holding on. And, like, I guess you don't realize, like, you moving your car back and forth, how much it's actually,
a lot of whiplash,
throwing the person. And I was holding on. It was a joke at first, but then it got ridiculously serious because this person was about to do the exact same thing, chuck
Just
me
throw
off.
you off
So
the car.
thank God they like slammed on their brakes and saved me from like getting my head smashed in the pavement.
Dear Lord. I mean, there are stories of kids on cars getting their heads smashed. I think those are on some other episodes, but yeah, you're 100% right about that. Alex C. said, my biggest youth ministry fail was one year at camp. We had bunk beds in our room, and I was on the bottom bunk, and a group of 3 teenage boys dogpiled me through the bottom of the bed. So they must have just jumped on the youth pastor, and the whole thing just collapsed on him. Ends up on the floor. Yeah, you probably were not invited back either. That's
amazing. That is amazing. Like, have you ever felt like punching a kid in the face? Yeah. After that.
Now you want to punch 3 kids in the face. Matt F. My biggest youth ministry fail was when I had an engineer build a human crossbow to shoot kids down a slip and slide.
All right, that wasn't a good idea. I'm just going to tell you. Look at me. That was a bad idea from the start.
Even when it worked, it nearly gave them whiplash. No kidding.
Really?
When it malfunctioned, it broke a girl's ankles. I kind of blame the engineer that built it and not my epic vision. No, bro, I'm blaming you.
No. That was not an epic vision at all. Right? That was a horrible idea. But thank you.
This girl must have gone full send and just smoked like a building with both her legs. Because how else do you break both ankles?
Right. No, I mean, the like force, the velocity, the whiplash. I mean, again, like that girl will always remember that moment in youth group. So thank you for that. But my friend,
she'll remember you, Matt.
Let me just tell you that wasn't an epic vision. At all.
Nathan W. Here's my biggest youth ministry fail. We had Bang energy drinks in our cafe. Mm-hmm. I was giving away something as a prize for the game and said, you can have whatever you want. If you want to bang afterwards, that's fine too. That was in front of everyone, and they all lost it, and no one ever let me forget it.
No.
That's the worst, is just totally messing up your words and being like, oh, shoot.
Yeah.
And they're teenagers, so everyone's going to get it.
Like I was just saying, there are some things that you can come back from in a sermon, and then other things that you just don't recover from.
That's one that you definitely don't recover from.
Yeah. No, that you were done. Especially in a room full of teenagers.
Yes.
You were finished.
Game over. Jonathan K. He said, I shot a kid in the face with a Nerf gun. But little did I know, he had put a push pin in the dart, and I was a 1/4 inch away from hitting him in his eye.
Oh my goodness.
The kid kind of like made his own demise.
I mean, yeah.
At this point, what did he say? He must have like handed him he said, I shot a kid in the face with a Nerf gun. Little did I know he had put a push
you know what he probably did? He probably took the little punk, the little punk was probably shooting everybody.
Yeah.
And he went and took it and he was like, all right, here's a taste of your own medicine. Shot the kid with his own his own dart that he made. No regrets. Honestly, sir, you did a justice to humanity. You taught that child a lesson. He deserved it.
He will never forget. 1/4 inch from his eye, but it's okay.
Yeah, builds character.
It builds character. Jonathan K. also sent this one in. He said, I played real life Mario Kart with kids in the back of trucks throwing water balloons and bananas at each other. And then that's like the end of the story. I have a lot of questions about that.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many blanks to fill in. Like, okay, well then what happened?
Yeah.
Did somebody get hurt?
So did
it go
a bunch of go-karts that you were driving behind the truck, like water balloons and bananas? It sounds kind of fun, but...
Yeah, but I mean, was it epic or was it just like a flop? Because everything I'm picturing right now is a flop. Yeah. Like it was like, oh, that was a great idea, but man, when we did it, that sucked.
Yes.
I've had those ideas, right? Like... didn't just pan out the way that I intended it to.
No.
So, yeah, we need more.
You know what? I have one more. This one's funny.
All right,
I will end it on this one. This is from Wesley M. One year, a student pooped his pants while on a youth trip.
Awesome.
We knew who it was due to previous experiences, and he tried to blame it on someone else by shoving his poopy underwear in someone's pillowcase, which happened to be mine. Moral of the story is a great pillow was lost that weekend.
Oh, no.
Dude, just when you think like being a youth pastor can't get any worse,
I'd kill
of
him.
all pillows
I'd
it
kill
ended
him.
up in.
Like, yeah, it's reasonable. The youth pastor is the one that pooped his pants. The only adult in the room. He's the
Yeah, he was the one.
He's the one that's pooping his pants. That is so messed up.
Oh my goodness.
Young man, you were wrong.
You did him dirty, bro. That's
you
not
need
cool.
to own that. I'm actually picturing like Adam Sandler. Remember when the kid pees his pants, and then like to make the kid not feel bad, he pees his pants too.
Vaguely.
And he's like, "Oh, only the cool kids pee their pants," and like everybody in the room like starts peeing their pants. Then.
Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would be. Oh, dude, I would be so mad. I'd be so mad. But that is the end of this episode. Thanks for coming back on, man. This has been a lot of fun. If you have stories that you want to share on this podcast, email them to ygchronicles@gmail.com. We'd love to get you on the podcast. If you have some crazy stuff, we want to hear it. On top of that,
to hear all of the bad stuff.
Yes, absolutely. On top of that, we have a TikTok channel. Go check that out. We're posting content. What's cool about that is, we'll throw a video up there that might not have been featured on a podcast yet. So
Right.
it kind of like premieres on there. You might get some stories ahead of time.
And I'm not gonna lie, like I love the TikTok because if you're like me, short term, short attention span, like these are the highlights.
Yes.
So if you're enjoying these, it's so much fun to just go through and scroll through like the funniest moments in these podcasts. So you really want to check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. We have an Instagram page as well. Youth Group Chronicles. Just search that. You'll find some clips on there as well. But most important, if you have stories, ygchronicles@gmail.com. Send them in like we did. The past few episodes, we've been reading some email submissions. They're starting to trickle in. So that's
so
always
good.
super exciting. Pastor Chad, before we go, like I said, previous podcast, you have a podcast your own. Why don't you give us like the 30-second rundown of what you guys do?
Great. Thanks for letting me share about this. My wife and I have a podcast called Truth Be Told. Just talk about the truth of God's word and how it applies to our culture in this day. We answer difficult questions like, how do we overcome stress? What do we do when we're facing anxiety? What is the truth about alcohol? What is the truth about sex? We're dealing with real topics that people face on a daily basis. And so we want to, make it palatable, make it fun. We try to enjoy ourselves, right? Because ministry and these kind of conversations need to be fun.
Yeah.
So that's what we do. So check it out. Instagram, Facebook, Truth Be Told.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for being here. This was a blast. Excited for you all to hear it and see you all next week.
See you soon.